On the whole, I do not find Christians outside of the catacombs sufficiently sensible of conditions. Does anyone have the foggiest idea what sort of power we so blithely invoke? Or, as I suspect, does no one believe a word of it? The churches are children playing on the floor with their chemistry sets, mixing up a batch of TNT to kill a Sunday morning. It is madness to wear ladies' straw hats and velvet hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews, for the sleeping God may wake someday and take offense, or the waking God may draw us out to where we can never return. I love this quote from Annie Dillard. You may be familiar with it. It comes from Teaching a Stone to Talk, and it really does speak volumes of our lack of comprehension of what we are up to on Sundays as we approach the holy and encounter the power and presence of God. I don't know about you, but as I hear the gospel, I think more often than not, I stand in with the crowds. You know, the people who say that Jesus is, well, like John the Baptist or one of the prophets. Well, that's not what I say in public, however. When it comes time to answer the question in public, I'm quick to join myself with Peter's insight, claiming it as my own. But if actions speak louder than words, and you and I know they do, then I have to admit that most of my actions don't profess that Jesus is Messiah. Instead, they testify that he is, well, a good man, a great man, an example to follow, like one of the prophets of old. And I suspect that I'm not alone in sensing this disconnect between my public confession and my everyday actions. I think most of us know that there is a gap, a wide gap, between the words we say on Sunday and the lives we lead the rest of the week. Not intentionally, certainly with no malice aforethought. In fact, most of us would like the words we say on Sunday not just to align with the rest of our lives, but actually matter each day. And so the question is put to us: who do you say Jesus is? Not just repeating the words of the creed, but saying it with our lives, with our relationships, our bank accounts, our time, our energy, and all the rest. Who do you really say Jesus is? Well, I want us to wonder for a few moments about that. What do we actually mean when we say Jesus is Messiah, or Son of the living God, or Jesus is Lord? Or for those of you who are more theologically inclined, that Jesus is the second member of the Trinity. Or in the words of the Creed, that Jesus is light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made. It's hard for us to align our lives with what we profess with our lips sometimes. And I'm not sure that most of us really know what we mean when we say Jesus is Messiah, myself included. I suppose we can take some comfort from Peter, who didn't understand himself. Whatever it is that Jesus was and is, it's incredibly hard to put into words, isn't it? It's hard for us to explain who Jesus is to anyone we meet. And so we come up with titles and formulations, church words, I like to call them, trying to get at that mystery of what God has done in and through the person of Jesus. And too often I fear these words only keep this wild and unpredictable God of love and grace at arm's length, right? We want a beautiful liturgy, but it's really not going to affect my life. We want the words, but it's really nothing that close. And so Jesus remains an inspiration, perhaps, an example for us, but ultimately he's pretty tame and safe. Okay, well, here's the next thing I want you to do. I want you to spend a little time using plain and simple words of your own making, of what you mean when you say Jesus is Messiah. How would you describe Jesus to someone who's never heard of him before? To a child or an adult or a friend or a stranger who happened to ask, "Who is Jesus?" I know this can be scary, so I'll go first. I think Jesus is really God's way of showing us how much God loves us and all people. God is so vast that I think we have a hard time connecting to God, right? God can kind of be that spiritual, amorphous blob out there. And so God came to us like one of us. God became a human being to live like one of us in order to reveal just how God feels about us. In this sense, Jesus reveals God's heart to the world, to us, a heart that aches with all who suffer depression and think seriously about ending their lives, a heart that's upset and angry when there's a shooting in a school again, a heart that's torn up in grief at the desperate situation and violence that rips apart the land that we have named holy. It's a heart that loves us like only an adoring parent can do. A parent who wants the very best for us and is always eager to welcome us home in grace and forgiveness and love. And there's more than that. There's more. I think Jesus also came to show us what's possible. Rather than give in to the threat of disease, Jesus healed. Rather than surrender people to demons, Jesus showed compassion. And rather than let people starve because there's not enough to go around, Jesus fed people who were hungry. Jesus refused to be satisfied or limited by the way things are and invites us to do the same. Because if Jesus' life and death show us how much God loves us, Jesus' resurrection shows us that love is more powerful than hate or fear or death itself. In fact, it shows us that God's love wins. So there it is. That's my story. It's not perfect, but at least when I put it this way, I have an easier time imagining what it means for me to say Jesus is Messiah. Because I think it means that I try to live filled with God's love, to share God's love, to be aware of the brokenness of the world and even more aware of God's grace and power in the resurrection. It means that I look at all of my life, my time and my relationships, my hopes, dreams and finances, and all the rest through the lens of both the power and possibilities created by seeing God's heart laid bare in this person we know as Jesus. Well, perhaps I can end here. I would like you to come up with a sentence or two that describes what you believe about Jesus and really let those words shape you this coming week. I don't think Jesus asks us to profess who we believe he is for his sake, to come up with the right formula, if you will. But he asks the question for us. Jesus wants us to be caught up in the power of his love, the power of his life. And these are words of power that help root us in that love and that possibility that Jesus offers. It may take a while for it to sink in. Peter is a good example. And if we start this week thinking about this, writing those few words on a note card or in a book, if we start this week over time, we'll sink deep into those words so that they shape every part of our lives. And we will know the love and the power of Jesus at work in our lives and in this world.